Believe it or not, people have been asking us to check out ITX boards for Intel CPUs and for some cheaper options. I'm not going to say budget, but ASRock may have the answer. This is the ASRock B860i Lightning Wi-Fi, and it's going for around 219 US dollars, or around about 355 Aussie dollars at the time of filming this video. Let's take a little bit of a look at this pretty interesting mini ITX board for Intel's new Core Ultra processors. And yes, people have actually been asking us to take a look at these boards. Let's dive in.
This video is brought to you by VIPSCDKey.com. Have you ever installed Windows 11 only to see the watermark of death? You don't need to fork out a couple of $100s for a key. You can grab one from today's video sponsor, from VIPSCDKey.com for a tenth of the price. You can use our code GEAR to get 30% off for this month only. How good is that? That takes that already cheap Windows 11 key and makes it even cheaper. It's easy as placing your order. Bingo bango. You've got your new key on your orders page. You chuck that key into the activation screen and you're good to go. No more watermark of death. Use code GEAR to get 30% off for this month only. Link in the description. On with the video. Back to you, Nick.
Here it is, the ASRock B860i Lightning Wi-Fi. Let's get that motherboard out of the way so we can take a little bit of a closer look at everything that comes with this board. And spoiler alert, there's not a whole lot here. First of all, we've got some documentation. This will help you install a CPU cooler, how to install your CPU, and basically just everything you need to get yourself up and running if you've never built a PC before. And even if you have, this is also kind of helpful. There's a set of M.2 screws for the two M.2 slots on this motherboard. There's a set of SATA or SATA cables for your 2.5-inch SSDs or those 3.5-inch hard disks. As you're about to find out, this board has a very interesting SATA port configuration. There's also some Velcro straps. You can use this for cable management inside your system, or you can use this to help organize the cables outside of your system. There is a thermal probe. This will allow you to put this anywhere in your case and measure the thermals inside of your case and let the fans adjust themselves based on that area inside your case. This is a kind of thing that's been around for a long time, but is very useful. There's also a set of antennas for the built-in Wi-Fi and the Bluetooth. All right, let's unsheath the B860i Lightning Wi-Fi and take a bit of a closer look at everything that makes this little old motherboard tick. First of all, we've got a front panel audio header, which is just behind the overhang of the I/O cover. There's a USB Type-C front panel header, and then there's the front panel header for all the lights and all the switches. There's also 3 SATA or SATA ports, which is very, very strange to have an odd number. There's a 3-pin 5V addressable RGB header. There's the USB Type-A front panel header. There is a USB 2.0 header at the back behind everything, and the 24-pin power connector to send juice to your brand new motherboard. There's also a little postcode diagnostic LED array on the surface of the board to help debug, and there's another 3-pin 5V addressable RGB header. Along the top edge of the board, there is 3 PWM fan headers. There's also the EPS power connector to send juice to your brand new Intel Core Ultra processor. In terms of the PCIe layout on this board, it has a single by 16 PCIe Gen 5 slot for your graphics card. As for power delivery, it has a 10+1+1 phase VRM layout with 110 amp smart power stages with a 10-layer PCB. And unlike the B850 version of this board, it has 2 heatsinks. There's one along the top. There's one that covers the whole I/O cover with a heat pipe connecting both of them. And the most interesting thing about the VRM on this is that it is actively cooled. There is a little fan underneath the I/O cover here. In terms of the socket itself, this is Intel's LGA 1851 socket that supports Intel's new Core Ultra processors, well, Core Ultra Series 2 processors. Let's pop that socket open so you can have a bit of a look inside of this socket. And I usually do this just in case you've never seen inside of a socket and to help people who are looking at building to show them what is inside a socket, because chances are if you're watching this video, you've never built a PC before, or you're upgrading your PC and you want to know exactly what it looks like inside of the socket. Flipping the board over, you can see that it has a kind of backplate that helps support the VRM cooling. Now, this is actually helping the VRM cooling. There are thermal pads between that backplate and the motherboard itself to help cool a bit of that power delivery. In terms of RAM compatibility, this one's pretty interesting. It's got two DDR5 DIMM slots with 128 gigs of total memory at 9333 megatransfers, and it also supports CU DIMM modules as well. Let's pop the heatsink off for the M.2 slot on this board, because this board has two M.2 slots. The slot on top of the board is a PCIe Gen 5x4 slot, and if we flip the board over, there's another M.2 slot that's PCIe Gen 4x4. For rear I/O, we've got two USB Type-A ports, we've got HDMI 2.1, we've got a Thunderbolt USB Type-C port, there's a whole bunch of USB Type-A ports, there's a single USB 2.0 port, which you would typically use to flash the BIOS. There's a 2.5 gigabit Ethernet port. There's the antenna connectors for the built-in Wi-Fi 6E. There's a BIOS flashback button. There's a line in jack, a line out jack, and SPDIF/optical audio output.
All right, I hope you guys enjoyed taking a little bit of a look at this board. This board's pretty interesting in that it's got two M.2 slots, which is kind of perfect for mini ITX boards and small form factor systems. This is something I talk about quite a lot when it comes to these type of boards. If you're building a small form factor system, you know, two M.2s is fine. But what I thought was a bit strange with this board, it's got 3 SATA ports, which is, I've never seen a board with an odd number of SATA ports. But other than that, I think this board is quite nice, given that even though this is a lower end chipset, it still has Thunderbolt 4, which is something that you guys may or may not know, but it's something that I use every single day for video editing. I'll just give you guys a little bit of a backstory on this. I have an M.2 NAS that I use to edit all of our videos of. It's connected to 10 gig Ethernet for the network, but to my editing PC, it's Thunderbolt. So I get the full 40 gig speed for editing. So yeah, I mean, being able to do that on a relatively inexpensive mini ITX board for a platform that is better for content creation than it is for gaming, I would say that this is not too terrible. I do have a whole bunch of new Intel content coming out after Intel pushes out a whole bunch of fixes for their stuff. But here's one thing I wanted to mention about that. This is a common thing that I've been talking to people about in person and on social media is if Intel does fixes for all their Core Ultra stuff, that's a problem because it should have been like that at launch. Right? You have to remember this really important thing with these fixes. A lot of people who aren't tech savvy won't necessarily apply those BIOS updates and fixes on boards that have older BIOSes. Right, so there is that too, so keep that in mind. Anyways, all that aside, let us know what you think of the B860i Lightning Wi-Fi. I've been seeing some comments around on our other ASRock videos on the Lightning boards with people saying, why have they called it Lightning? That's such a stupid name. Yeah, it's just a name, guys.